Director of the Redwood Region Economic Development Commission, and I'm pleased to be your moderator today. Welcome to the day 2 of the Zero Waste Humboldt webinar series for business. Please note, to access the webinar materials, you can go to the zerowastehumboldt.org website. There's a lot of the materials from these workshops will be there. There's a lot of other resources. You'll need a password to get into that part of the website, and that password is capital ZWH2021. If you do have questions as we're going along, just feel free to put them in the chat, or the Q&A actually is even a better place to put it, at the bottom of your screen, and we will call those out as we can. And so before we get started, I'm going to introduce the president of Zero Waste Humboldt, Maggie Gaynor, who has a few words about today's webinar and the certification program of Zero Waste Humboldt. Maggie?
Thanks, Greg. I'll start with just a few quick announcements, and then I'll pick up where I left off yesterday. And this will be just a short presentation about the status, because so many questions have been asked of us of zero waste and trying to reduce waste in the time of COVID-19. So for starters, I really want to express our gratitude to the Rose Foundation, the North Coast Co-op, COCATAT, and Coast Central Credit Union for consistently being generous supporters. I want to thank Greg Foster for agreeing to moderate this little series for us, and to thank Jess Pettit for being our Zoom host. Announcements. We have decided, I kind of surveyed a number of people by phone or email. There are a number of folks who, with a variety of businesses, that want to become a part of the certification process, commit to that. We're going to postpone the third training event that will focus solely just on certification. We will postpone that probably by a month. We'll have more be able to join, and we will keep you all informed and check in with you actually about the most convenient time to schedule that. We, in previous years, when our training for businesses was done in real time, it was almost a 6-hour fully committed day. One of the things we've tried to do is make it more convenient for small businesses that just can't let a manager or an owner or a key employee away that many hours. And so, and 3 hours is a bit hard for any of us to stay with Zoom. So that's why we split them into 2 sessions. I want to ask you to contact us. If ever you get at a point where you're telling each other, you're thinking, we could reduce more waste if, and you've identified a problem, a barrier, something that is confusing, some conundrum, that's the time to contact us at Zero Waste Humboldt, because we'll either do some research for you, we'll match you up with a business that has solved that problem, and you guys can work it out together. There's a variety of different things. When we're all done, you'll get an email from us with 4 questions, and that's feedback is the breakfast of champions. That will really help us do better. I'm going to launch right into my COVID-19 presentation. So I'm going to assume everybody's got this, right?
Looks great.
So the conditions, picked right up where I left off before with greenwash. So for decades, and I would say especially in the last 20 years, we have had a long-term, well-financed propaganda marketing campaign to businesses and the American public about plastics from the petrochemical industry that makes all the single-use plastics. And And then I read all of their market research, what they're trying to decide to do next because of what consumers want. And they are seeing, you know, more and more consumers have concerns about global warming, have concerns about the environment. And so instead of actually doing something about making it more recyclable, reusable, or designing their products to not be wasteful, to be completely different, and even let go of, just cease the proliferation of all the single-use plastic doodads. Instead, they developed these marketing campaigns. So the conditions previous to the announcement about the pandemic, we were getting a little bit better, and I'm speaking nationwide and pretty much in our region in Humboldt County, with plastics in packaging, only a little bit. So that's the bubble wrap. The area where we had the most progress is because of state law and local ordinances, where we have had a reduction in film plastic, all of the single-use plastic shopping bags, and even some improvements with single-use plastic water bottles, but not enough. Lots of work in all of these areas still to be done. And then you can see some of the, on the right side, single-use plastic doodads of all types. Are the Arcata ordinance in particular, and some of the directions that the city of Arcata was moving in, were starting to really correct for some of these things and offer washable, reusable alternatives, better alternatives. And so that's where we were. We had a lot of progress to make, but we were moving in the right direction. So when the pandemic hit, it's kind of like, where were you when it all came down? What the question really is, in my conversations with businesses, I have learned not everybody got their information in planning to move forward from the right sources. So where did your business go for information so that you would do everything that you could do to protect employees and customers, whether you're in a manufacturing business or a food serving business, or, you know, an office space? Everybody had to gather information. So one of the places that is probably the best way I can put it is in cooperation, in cahoots with the plastic single-use manufacturers, is the California Restaurant Association. And that is where some of our restaurants went. And of course, the advice they got was to replace all of that reusable stuff that they had started to comply with local ordinances and everything with plastics. Lots and lots of single-use plastics. But if you go to the federal government, the CDC, Food and Drug Administration, or our Humboldt County Public Health Environmental Services Department, which we at Zero Waste Humboldt, we contact at least a few times a year periodically, just to make sure we're giving accurate public education. And none of them tell you that you're required to switch over to single-use plastics. And just some of these illustrations, a lot of the questions have been, oh my, what are we going to do with all of the PPE and the plastics being generated because of COVID-19, and all the doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals and you know, folks who are needing to be covered and protected, and, you know, all the plastics in the hospitals. And my answer is some of these things are exactly what plastics were invented for. We're very pragmatic and realistic at Zero Waste Humboldt. If something happened to Humboldt County's water quality and we couldn't drink it, and you know, floods, earthquakes, whatever, I would be one of the first people in line waiting for my single-use plastic water bottles, or, you know, however I could get my water. So there are emergency situations and long-term durable plastics that's what they're there for. But not for everyday life habits, you know, and that is where the plastics industry has done us all a disservice. So that kind of answers that question. So just the facts, there's been an awful lot of research, and a couple of us have really been bird dogging it since March. The facts are COVID-19 is airborne. Wear a mask. These are the outcome of research. The results are these facts. Wear a mask, train all your employees to wear masks, wash your surfaces, wash your hands, maintain as much distance as possible. I've been told by some folks in this field, public health, that 6 feet is an arbitrary number. 10 feet's even better, you know, so maintain that distance for safety. In the research that's being done, and there's been repeated checking, you know, from different research centers, not only in the United States, but all over the world. One of the first ones was done in hospitals in Wuhan. There is no evidence that of food packaging being related to transmission. The research in March of early 2020, and it has continued, other research has continued to verify this, that has tested transmissibility of surfaces and a variety: glass, metal, plastics, wood, mylar, cloth, so cloth shopping bags, you know. Of all the different surfaces, guess which surface the virus has lingered the longest? It's plastic. So I'm just here to tell you, I am not a public health official. I'm not a specialist in the spread of disease, but you have to really sort out what the facts are and proceed to protect. You know, you do what your local public health officials tell you to do. This is the result of research. I think that's my last one. I'll pick up at the end with, I want to give a little presentation on some inspiring examples, photos of local businesses that are good examples of a few reuse, but local manufacturing with, so that's like real recycling, value added, and then some dreams that we have for local economic development. And that'll be sort of my wrap up at the end. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Maggie, for that. And now we'll go to our first presenter, and that is Eddie Blakesley. Eddie is co-owner and the operations manager of Los Bagels. Los Bagels has been a very community-minded and environmentally conscientious business since it was founded. Eddie attended a zero waste training in 2016 and immediately began implementing the step-by-step zero waste method. And so Eddie's going to talk a little bit about their experience and how you might be able to translate that to yourself. All right, Eddie, go for it.
Okay, thank you. Like Greg was saying, in 2016, I attended the zero waste. Oops. Okay. In 2016, I attended the zero waste certification seminar at Humboldt Area Foundation, and then kind of came back. And what happened with us was we got really lucky and got an intern from HSU to come and help us with the project. So while I was still doing my daily, all my daily activities, I was able to have our intern, his name was Tim, get in there and start doing some of the recording of everything. So really what we did was kind of come in with the mindset that education and starting simple was going to be the easiest route to achieve the goal we were heading for. I wouldn't say necessarily that we set out to be a zero waste company, but what we did was set out to implement zero waste practices. I think one thing that I took away from the seminar was, if I was really going for zero waste right off the bat and that was my only focus, that it would have become overwhelming and too hard to really wrap our head around and maybe actually get to that goal. So what we did to start out was really start with our staff and encouraging them to use reusable mugs and plates and any sort of reusable items that we could wash. And then we then took that to the customer as well. And then really switched kind of, any of our to-go items, we really focused on making them 100% paper so that we were able to have them all composted. And then we just really started looking at our waste stream and seeing what we could pull out of the trash and then recycle or compost. And that's where the local worm guy really came in on there and gave us a lot of really like good feedback on what was compostable and what was not, and really like furthered that education as to giving us the knowledge on what we could and couldn't use. And then we just started, to go back really to the beginning of Los Bagels, is since 1984 when Los Bagels started, Dennis and Peter and John and Paul, they were all really involved in recycling, and any excess food was either going to feed people or going to feed livestock. So we already had a foundation and a culture of not wasting where we couldn't. So really the program in 2017, when we really got it going, was more of a revamp than a full restart or a full startup on there. So one thing that we really noticed is that first 75 to 80% is really achievable, and you're really going for it. You're like, wow, this is really going quickly. And then once you get to the last 10%, you're like, whoa, they really put on the brakes there. So that's where the challenge started to come in, was, how do we really chip away at that last 10%? And one thing we did was, let's stop offering plastic water bottles in our cooler, and we're gonna offer these jars and look for substitutes. Or let's reach out to our vendors and see how they can stop wrapping all of our product in plastic as it comes, or is that even an option? So it's been new routes of how to further reduce the waste. And then we had even started a community cupboard where we were able to offer reusable serviceware to different events, like the chamber mixers, or Scrapper's Edge at one point had got a bunch of dishware from us to use for one of their events, and that was really going good. And then COVID hit. And I think we were in a good place because all of our to-go stuff was already paper. And then one thing we really came up against was the glove usage, and the community really reaching out to us and asking us to wear gloves during this time, and the importance of, in their minds, of wearing gloves in food service. We constantly go to Sarah, who is our health inspector, and her thing from the beginning has been wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. So we always are washing our hands, and now we're really like wanting to figure out a way to educate the public on the importance of washing hands over glove use, and really trying to come up with a program where we could cut back on some of the glove use again. Obviously, if anybody wants us to wear gloves, we would jump in there and wear gloves, for their safety. But kind of more bringing that education to the importance of washing your hands and wearing gloves properly. A lot of what we found out was a lot of people aren't wearing the gloves properly. So in order to wear the gloves properly, you need to be washing your hands and then putting on the gloves. And then as you take the gloves off in a specific way, you need to be washing your hands again. So, so we really learned a lot about, glove use and using utensils in on the delis and different things like that, to start to chip away at the glove deal that we've taken on. I think the most exciting thing about going for a zero waste certification or practicing zero waste is it's ever changing, and anytime you bring on a new item or a new way of doing things, you come up against a new potential item in your waste stream. So then you need to figure out how, is it important enough for you to take on this new way of doing things in order, and then are you able to dispose of that waste, or is it not creating waste? So I would think, not that I would necessarily sabotage us to not really get to that full 90 to 100%, but I think that constant going at it keeps you aware, and it keeps you excited about, potentially getting there at some point. And it keeps that constant education for the staff going, and being a food service and an introductory level kind of place for people in the workforce, it is a constant education, and you're constantly teaching people about how we sort our waste and the importance of that, and the importance of not using where you don't have to, and ultimately getting to that goal. But 2021, we're excited to really go at it again and see if we can keep tacking up those percentage points and just getting closer and closer to that 90%. I think that's pretty much it.
I flip my script down so I can talk. All right. Well, we have some time for questions. If you want to, you can type your question. There's a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A, and then I can read out the questions, and we can also then have a written record of them. Are there any questions for Eddie? Maggie, is that you raising your hand?
Yeah, if nobody else wants to start, a few questions. We've all learned from your process of just starting off with a commitment at Los Bagels, and then you just keep, it's a way of thinking and a way of approaching your work. One question is, how do you do employee training? Is it like once a week you set, or just as people are oriented new into the organization? How many when you go full blast pre-COVID, how many employees do you have? And then do you have just even some percentages or any kind of numbers at all about how you, did you go from a larger recycling or garbage collection container down to a smaller? What were the ways that you were able to tell you were making some headway?
Well, just for kind of bulk, what we were doing is when we had started the project, we were having a 3-yard dumpster picked up twice a week. And by the time we were really had it going and kind of pulled in, we were having a 1-yard dumpster picked up once a week. So it was a pretty substantial drop. And then what we were also able to do was bring on the local worm guys. So we were now supporting a local business, and we were producing less waste going directly to the landfill. We also had a project with Alchemy Construction and the distillery doing a bagel whiskey. And what was so neat is that Amy never told us at the beginning that this was a way for us to rein in our waste. But once we got to the project where we no longer had enough bagels to feed them to make the whiskey, she says, well, then the project's been completed, because now you no longer making more bagels than you need to make. and we've really helped you rein in that waste. So then it really like pushes you out to being like, wow, somebody in the community really tricked us into making us waste less and did this really awesome project and let us be involved in it. As far as employee education, I personally spend time with every single employee that we bring on. We are pretty lucky as a company that we don't do a ton of hiring. So it's usually one or maybe two people every few months that we train. And then once you get them into it, then you're just kind of monitoring their behavior, right? You see them grab that paper cup and you remind them, hey, we also have this cupboard of reusable mugs. Or they grab the paper to go boat and, well, don't forget about all the plates. And really that only takes a couple times and it really starts to sink in. And then what becomes really neat is that they come back to you and be like, hey, I went home and talked to my roommates, or I went home and talked to my family. And now we're all trying to waste less and use less on there. And the relationships that we've built with Thule Fog Farm, you know, feeding the pigs, or Travis has pigs at his house and he's one of the partners and he'll be able to take food home. Or to know that for the last 36 years, we've had a guy named Isidro taking leftover bagels to his cows, and that sometimes the butchers won't sell the meat because it smells like garlic from the cows eating all the garlic. You know, so it's like you end up with all these really great stories and all these really great relationships with community out of doing something because you feel it's right, not necessarily because you're out there trying to get an award for it or anything else. It's just we started it because we felt like it was the right thing to do, and then it became a fun project. And honestly, to see the excitement of, you know, the founders of Los Bagels, Dennis and Peter, and really see that sparkle like in their eye of wow, this is the next wave of something that we really felt strongly about, you know, when we started, is that it's carrying on and that culture is continuing. So
I don't know if they still do it, but I remember going to Agnes J. Johnson School in Weot as a kid many moons ago, and we had in the lunchroom we had two bins, one for all the food waste and one for all the paper waste, which was a straw and a milk carton and a napkin, basically, is all it was. And the food waste all went to actually my neighbors in Miranda. They had pigs, and they would take all the food waste from all the schools and feed them to the pigs. We do have speaking of Southern Humboldt, we do have a few questions from Southern Humboldt, and I'll just kind of lump them all together. So Donnie is asking questions around composting, and I'll just rattle them out and let you answer them. One is any ideas or any tips on how to separate food waste between what's going to the animals and what's going to the compost? How do you find a worm guy in Southern Humboldt? And is there a list of things to use in the garden, like eggshells and coffee grounds? So they're basically, what's animal, what's compost, and how do we find a worm wrangler?
Well, coffee grounds, that was the thing that we had picked up, you know, from the beginning. And just recently, our coffee grounds person had taken on a new position and was unable to take home the coffee grounds. So that has now become my job to take home the coffee grounds. So now our compost continues to grow. So I take home all the coffee grounds currently, but I'm always reaching out to different community and letting people know that they can come get them whenever they like, and we make it pretty accessible. The thing with food waste is any food waste that you're feeding to livestock has to be pre-consumer. So it would be anything from eggshells or dough or anything that is behind the scenes that has never been out to the customer. The rest of it is picked up by the local worm guy, and I would maybe reach out to him and see if he has any ideas on, you know, people looking to start a business, or, you know, kind of picking his brain on how he's been able to make it happen. I think we're just super lucky, really, that he has been able to stay in business and keep it going, because I know a few few times people really tried the startup and it just didn't work. And in the beginning of our whole project, I took it all home, and I'll tell you, it really accumulates quickly. So I was able to keep it going for a few months, and then my wife just said, you got to find another route. So that was really the pressure on me to, you know, to find a new route to do it. But what I also learned is how quickly things break down, and what breaks down and what doesn't break down. And it was a full education on how to layer it, or, you know, what works and what does not work. And still to this day, I have a giant compost pile that, you know, I don't really even have time to garden because I'm fully kind of committed to the compost. Yeah, I think it's really just asking questions and asking people and really networking with the community to see what you can make work. And really looking for those products that break down really well. Like our to-go boats and the covers for those are 100% paper, and that paper really breaks down quickly.
And Molly Steele, who's the excellent Chamber of Commerce Director for the City of Arcata, has put the website for the local worm guy in the chat. So, and that is localwormguy.com. So marketing that is pretty direct and pretty rememberable there. So localwormguy.com. Are there any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or put them in the Q&A.
I've got just a quick.
Go for it, Maggie.
Yeah, what Eddie is describing from Los Bagels' perspective is this, you know, at its very best, our local economy is this business ecosystem, and the relationships of businesses, what one is a byproduct of one business can end up being something really useful in the production process of another business. With packaging, with byproduct from manufacturing, just all of that. It is very much what he's described is like an ecosystem. And that is a healthy business environment, that integrating zero waste methods into how you do your everyday work, that it spreads throughout the community that way. And businesses, some of the best and the cool and most effective waste reduction, I mean, in terms of tonnage, have been businesses helping each other. I just wanted to suggest to Eddie that, you know, you guys all wear those cool t-shirts, those Los Bagels t-shirts. I think they're usually black, maybe on the backs, because you are putting the bagels together when the public comes in. You know, maybe they can be printed on the back, "We wash our hands," or something like that.
Yeah.
I wondered about that, because the washing hands is really what needs to happen, but there's a perception, and you want your customers to not be nervous. And so I've wondered about that. I just wanted to just state that Humboldt County's businesses that produce food and are food serving and have food waste, and that includes school cafeterias and hospital cafeterias, and, you know, any of those, we are underserved when it comes to composting. And anybody who cares would like to have more service, more a centralized facility, more. Would like to help the local worm guy grow their business and have more, you know, maybe another one regionally in Southern Humboldt or whatever. All of those kinds of things. Doesn't have to be one answer to our composting problem. It can be, you know, multivariate way of going about it, but you have to let your local officials, elected leaders, know that as the state begins to require more, that we keep food waste and other organic material out of the landfill because of methane, we need to have better services for composting. And the local worm guy is just, everybody loves them. They're a fantastic example, but it will, the need will probably the demand will be faster, grow faster than what they can keep up with for the time being.
Okay, we have one last chance for, oh, looks like Kate might have a question. Go for it, Kate.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Eddie, for your really interesting presentation. I really appreciate the enthusiasm with which you address trash. Who is the person that was the intern again?
His name was Tim Carpaccio, and that was set up through Humboldt State.
That's fantastic. Was that through Kevin Fingerman or?
That was through, I believe, Chris Gaines.
Okay, through the business.
Set that up for us, yeah.
Fantastic. Did he develop the Excel spreadsheet that you shared with Maggie, she shared it with me?
Yep.
Okay, I was going to share that just very quickly with the other members here. So I wanted to make sure that I attributed him correctly, if that was the case.
And he did tons of research on different paper to go items and how we would, how we would source those types of products in order to, have them be more compostable.
Fantastic. And I want to share that with the participants here is that HSU is a really good resource for this. Kevin Fingerman, he has a class who does a lot of environmental impact assessment. And then Chris Gaines, as you mentioned, actually Nancy Visner has taken that over for the School of Business now. And every semester they're looking to place interns, and this is a wonderful project for students, and it gives them some really hands-on experience on how to have an impact like this.
I believe Six Rivers also had an intern, and she was a Los Bagels employee, and her name's escaping me, but she was awesome, and she actually attended the zero waste certification that I attended.
She was one of our MBA students, I believe, and she ended up working as an intern there, and then she also ended up having a job with them for a while. So
yeah,
that's a great example of how there can be synergy between the school and the community.
Yeah.
Yep.
Her name is Sarah. And
Sarah,
yes,
yes, that's right. Yep. Thank you. Yeah.
The School of Business has been one of the several faculty in different classes have been one of the best sources, and environmental science, natural resource, engineering.
Right, which is Kevin Fingerman's.
Sociology, I could name about 6 different departments and different disciplines that have been excellent sources, and the faculty have been great at finding highly motivated students who want to work in this area. And then the really cool thing is either if they can't get hired on board at the company where they've been doing their internship, they just get a fantastic letter of reference, because at some point, every business is going to need to have somebody who understands this and specializes in this and helps the company achieve goals. And that's very helpful. It's mutually beneficial for the students. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday. And if someone isn't quite sure how to connect at HSU, we can help them do that.
Great. So we'll reach out if you want to, and I highly recommend using those internship programs if you can from Humboldt State. So we'll say thank you to Eddie. Sounds good.
I have one quick additional question or thing I'd like to add before we move on, if that's okay, Greg.
Well, and you're the next speaker, so sure.
Okay, I also wanted to just, in response to the question about the worm guys and composting, Cooperation Humboldt has a couple of projects in the works right now where they're trying to develop some composting projects. I know they're doing one in Arcata, and I believe they're working on one in Southern Humboldt as well. So stay tuned and connect with Cooperation Humboldt for additional information.
Great. And they do have a website, so you can look it up. And our next speaker, well, again, thank you, Eddie. That's great. Making me hungry for bagels. I need to leave my office here and walk down a little bit. But our next speaker is Kate, and Kate Lancaster. And I have a really detailed script here for you, Kate. She will be presenting a basic example of how to use volume to rate conversion for your baseline and monitoring, and an example of how to use one of the calculators for reporting your waste reductions impact on greenhouse gas emission and climate change. She is a recently retired associate professor from Humboldt State School of Business, congratulations, and where she taught sustainable business and accounting at the undergraduate and graduate level. She worked with students to help numerous businesses explore and measure their sustainability, environmental, social, and economic footprint. Zero Waste Humboldt is pleased to have her. She recently joined its board of directors. So, Kate, take it away.
Thank you, Greg. And I want to quickly just thank both Maggie and Eddie for some of the resources that I will be sharing with you. I'm going to share my screen here and bring up a quick little presentation. Maybe. Sorry, folks. You would think that I would know how to do this by now. All right, so you should be seeing my presentation, a PowerPoint presentation now.
It's great.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, so I want to first get started. This is a natural step, a process that they've developed in the 80s, and it's been adopted by many organizations. And I like just the simplicity of it. And so what I will be talking right now about is this baseline. Where is the company or organization at right now with respect to the waste generated? And I think that Eddie did a wonderful job demonstrating the visioning. Where do you want to be? And I love the example. It's continuous learning, and as things change, how do you adapt to that? So maybe you don't want to get to zero waste because then the challenge is over. These two things, the A is the visioning, where do you want to be? And so many organizations are trying to get to zero waste and as Maggie pointed out, there's so many challenges around that from the political and marketing business perspective. And so how do we overcome those challenges? Then we get to the baseline, and that's measuring, and then you make process as you're reducing. So you want to continually be tracking that progress and coming up with solutions and deciding on your priorities to get from your baseline to where you want to be. I'm going to just quickly, Maggie was really kind to develop or find a number of calculators and shared them with me. I'll be sharing them with a couple of them with you. I'll go through each of these just very quickly and give you just a little bit of feedback on what I found about each of them. And as I show here, I've got the create your own Los Bagels example at the very bottom, and I'll quickly go into that. And then I'm going to go in and give you a couple of, go into the websites of a couple of these and just show you a little bit about them. So the EPA's is the first one, and it is an incredibly comprehensive model. What it seems to me, however, is that for a small business, it would be almost overwhelming, and it really is designed for a municipality or for a very large organization, a very complex organization, maybe a university or something like that. So that one I really wouldn't recommend unless you've got a huge waste stream that you want to really be tracking. The next one is how do you convert? As Eddie was saying, you need to track what your waste is, but then how do you convert it to the impact that it has? And so there are a number of resources. This is the California Department of Resources conversion table, so that's relevant here. This is updated on a regular basis. It looks at a lot of different waste streams, and then that can be used to track and measure the impact that you're having. Or it can be used to develop a spreadsheet if you want to determine the impact that you're having. The next one, and I'll go into this one in a little detail, it's a fairly nice and straightforward calculator. What it has done is it has these conversions built into it, and I'll show you this in a little bit. What it does is it has this pull down box over here on the left-hand side, and when you change that pull down box, the numbers change. And so then what you can do is you can measure your waste stream, enter it into here, and then be able to have, then the calculations are done for you so that you're able to understand the impact that your reduction has. I have a dog that had to go to the vet, and I had scheduled it about a month ago, and and it's at the same time. And so a friend was taking my dog and my dog just returned, or the person just returned with my dog. And so you might hear a little barking. So I apologize for that up front. That just couldn't control things like that. So I'm continue. So this is one that I'll go into in a little bit more detail. The next one, I have not downloaded it to see. And what it looks like is this particular, it's an app that's fairly new. And what it is useful for is for maybe individuals or small businesses. And what it does is it tracks your dollars of consumption. And so it's got then these conversions built into it. So it'll say, okay, you spent $20 on fuel, and then that will convert to the greenhouse gases that you are responsible for because of that dollar purchase. So I like the fact that this is tied to your purchasing. It can really help you identify the impact of your purchasing habits. Next one is Cool California. I'm going to go into this one for you in a little bit more detail as well. It allows you to start with averages if you want to do so, but then you can put in more detailed information if you have it. So this one is one that we'll take a look at here in just a minute as well. This is another one. This one I don't like that much because it is so high level that you don't really have the detail to really, I think, allow you to make the decisions and understand the impact that you're having. As Eddie pointed out, you really need to get your hands dirty and get into your waste stream to really understand it. And so this one, what you do is you just, for each of these categories, you type in the number of pounds that you're generating, and then you end up with a calculation at the end of the tons of greenhouse gas that you are responsible for. Here again, as you heard me ask Eddie, this is the Excel spreadsheet that Tim developed. Really detailed information, and it just demonstrates the depth of time that you, and if you're interested in exploring this, the amount of research that you might need to do. And so what you would need to do is really track your trash for a period of time, and to understand the trash and the types of trash that you're generating. And so you see over here on the right-hand side of the screen, the things that were found in the waste, in the bins, or the different types of bins that were created. And as Eddie mentioned, the whiskey barrels, that was was Alchemy Construction. And then the livestock barrels, that was the food that was going to livestock, and the coffee grounds, that was, I guess, what was going to, or now is going to Eddie's compost pile. So really starting to understand the waste that you're generating helps you to make the decisions on how to minimize that waste and to reduce it. And I also, another thing that Eddie pointed out was thinking upstream, and how can you talk and communicate with your suppliers to try and minimize the creation of that waste so that you don't have to worry about it. One thing that kind of bothers me, and I'm sure that this has been discussed before, is you can claim that you're reducing your waste. For example, like with cardboard boxes, if you allow your customers to take those cardboard boxes out, well, then that's not part of your direct waste stream, but it still is a waste stream product that you're just kind of outsourcing to your customers. And so really trying to rethink and say, okay, how can I reduce it upstream is a really important component. So that's my slides, and I'll go into very quickly the calculators. So the first one that I have is this calculator for small business. I'll pause because I know I went through those fairly quickly, and I'll just pause and see if there's any questions before I move on to the calculator for small business demonstration. I know sometimes I talk fairly quickly.
None yet, keep going.
Okay, thank you. So this calculator for small business, what you do is select your location. And so I selected Humboldt County, and then you select the sector or business that you're in. And I'll just go down and select a restaurant here. So restaurant, we'll do, well, we don't have any sit downs right now, but we'll do sit down. How many facilities do we have? I'll say that we've got 1. Employees, I'll say that we've got, and that was kind of a default. And so I will just say that we've got 8 employees. And I'll say that our annual revenue is, I'll just make it round and 400,000. And the square feet of facilities, we'll say is 4,000. Okay. And what you'll see down here is that based upon these calculations, it gives me kind of a basic amount of tons of CO2 emissions, and says that the majority of that is then based upon the electricity that the organization is consuming. So again, these are based upon averages for restaurants in this area. And then what you can do is you can go in and further develop this. So that was the intro, and now we can go in and say, okay, travel. So how many miles of transport do we generate and or is used by the business? And so first off, I'm sorry, vehicles. So let's say we've got one vehicle that is used, and it we'll just leave it as it drives 12,000. We'll change it to 20,000 miles per year. It gets let's say 30 miles per gallon. And it does use gasoline. Okay, so we've got that. Public transport, let's say that we really just don't capture that information. So we'll leave that as 0. Air travel, the owner has taken maybe one trip, and so we've got the 7,000 mile trip. Maybe they went back to the East Coast for a conference. Employee commute, and I like the fact that this is included. In greenhouse gas calculations, there's 3 different scopes of calculations. The first one is the direct scope, and that is the amount of energy that's really consumed by the organization. Scope 2 or level 2 is like the use of electricity, and scope 3 is everything else. And everything else, part of that is the impact that our employees have. And so I know in this community, it's somewhat difficult to encourage our employees to use public transport. It might not work time-wise, or it might just take them a little bit more time. But how can we encourage our employees to reduce their impact? I know that the co-op has a number of employees that ride their bikes to work, and that reduces their impact. So trying to measure this scope 3, I think, is a very important component. And an example of the scope 3 that I gave earlier is the letting our consumers throw away our cardboard boxes rather than us taking responsibility for it. It's also thinking about what our suppliers are doing, and the impact that how we can impact or influence them to reduce the impact as well. So once we've got travel, we'll just say that our employees commute, let's just say 15,000 miles, because we're local here and we don't have that many employees. So again, we kind of can see that our travel now has changed a little bit. So, oops, it went down actually based upon the average. And so we will now go into facilities, and that asks us the amount of electricity. So here we can put in the actual amount if we have that information from our supplier, and the amount of gas that we provide. In the interest of time, I'm not going to be making these changes on these, but I just wanted to show you what's here. Then we can go into procurement. And this is the various types. And again, this is based upon dollars. And so this is converting on average, how many pounds of meat essentially can you buy for a certain amount of dollars. And then there's a built-in conversion that converts the production of that meat into a greenhouse gas. So we can see the various categories here. And then we've got a summary. And so the summary allows us to get some sense of the impact that we have. Again, it does not go into the level of detail that we saw with what Tim did for Las Vegas, because we see this waste is a fairly big component. And we aren't going to be able to dig into that in more detail. We would really have to go out and find out more information about the waste stream that we're generating. The second one that I wanted to go to allows you to do some of these calculations. What you would need to do, however, is you would need to develop your own spreadsheet to really capture this information, because it's really, you're just calculating one waste stream at a time, and the greenhouse gas equivalent, or the greenhouse gas equivalents, in metric tons. A nice thing about this one, though, is that it does give you a maybe bragging rights here, in that you're able to take the that reduction or that amount of CO2 that you're reducing and convert that to how many cars is being taken off the road there. So we've got a variety of different categories here. I'll just quickly show you them. So we've got these various categories. Again, you might want more detail, as you saw in Eddie's example, or in the example that I shared that Tim developed for Las Vegas. You might want to really have a better sense of what type of food scraps you are generating, or in more detail, so that you can really determine what can be sent to various places. So here what you do is, let me just show you quickly, this 35 pounds per cubic yard for mixed plastic, mixed rigid plastic. If I change it to beverage containers, that number changes. And so that's where you see the calculation happening. So this is essentially doing what you would have to do in a spreadsheet, is figure out the amount of pounds per cubic yard of waste, and then be able to do your calculations in order to determine the CO2 emissions and the amount of tonnage associated with it. The other things that you would need is some detailed information about the types of waste gatherers that you have available, their sizing, how many pickups that you have a week, and so that would take some kind of research in order to figure out that detail. So once you've done this, for each of your categories, you would be able to capture this information and then log it, and then be able to identify, again, this is your baseline. And so what you would want to end up doing then is creating some goals and say, how do I want to reduce my waste over time? And I know that you've been giving some good examples of that in this workshop. So that is all I have. I will take any questions that you have now.
All right, and you can type questions into the Q&A or in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on that. And that was great. I'm going to look at those, and I'm thinking, oh, geez, I need to do this in my office, and I may not score as well as I should. But that's good, right? That shows where we can improve.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions? All right, and again, those resources will all be linked in the Zero Waste Humboldt resource page. And again, you'll go to there and you can get to the resources. Use the capital ZWH2021 as your password, and you can get into it there and use those tools for you and your business. But thank you, Kate, very much. I'm glad your dog is home and okay. And this is the fun thing about doing Zooms from home. We've been doing this for about 10 months, and yeah, life and work certainly interact. But we're going to move on next to another old friend and colleague, Judith Silver. And Judith has been engaged in the fields of resource recovery, waste prevention, and recycling for over 30 years. Her experience includes working on multiple facets of the zero waste world as a local government zero waste staffer, for a waste hauler, for a paper broker, and as a consultant where she interacted with haulers, the public, local agency partners to improve resource management programs. So we will let Judith take it away. Hi, Judith.
Hi. I'm trying to share my video, but the host is not letting me yet, so I'll just go ahead and start sharing my screen. Start video, yay. Hi. So I'm Judith Silver. It's great to be here. I feel like I'm like the voice from the outside because you guys are all, the speakers so far have all been based up in Arcata. I love Arcata. Used to work with Maggie and Greg when we all were young. And it's really a pleasure to be back here today. And I work for, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. The next slide. let's see, this way. 1 second. Here we go. So yeah, this is me. I work for an agency called Recycle Smart. It's a joint powers authority. It's based in Contra Costa counties, and these are the communities that are in the JPA. It's Walnut Creek is sort of the biggest community, and then the surrounding areas. There's about 250 residents. I've been there for about a little less than a year, and before that, I worked at Zero Waste Marin. And then worked as a consultant for a number of years before that with Greg and Maggie, as I mentioned, and also have worked with paper brokers and just sort of been in and around the industry for a while. And I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you guys about reuse and ways that you know, businesses in your area can take advantage of opportunities that may be out there. I think one thing I was definitely thinking about when when Eddie was talking about, you know, how localized waste is, and which is something that we all, I mean, I think about a lot, and how you guys have opportunities up there to, you know, to use local resources that are very specific to your area, even within at Zero Waste Marin, which is much more rural than the agency I work for now. There were a lot of businesses who were able to, you know, interact with either farmers or pig farmers or, you know, schools that would use chicken or pigs in the west part of the county, where that's just not an option for an agency in a kind of suburban, you know, I don't think anybody in my service area right now has a pig, right? So that's just not an option for us. So I think it's, you know, while you may, I don't know if you feel this way, but you may feel you have constraints or you don't have as many access to markets, or, you know, it's sort of, you know, the world is the world up there in your world. But you also have things that are very unique to your area that we don't have. So just wanted to sort of point that out. It's very local. It's incredibly local. So that continues to be true. So I just wanted to briefly talk about what we do in our service area. We have kind of what's called a 3-stream sort that's available to everybody, all the businesses, multifamily, and residents, where we, you know, everything's can be picked up at the curb. We hold the franchise with our waste hauler, which is Republic. You guys use Recology, same kind of idea, and that's just sort of the system that we have. And I wanted to also, I don't know if this got touched on yesterday, but I just wanted to kind of talk about, you know, again, kind of in this stepping out of your immediate area sort of framework, just to talk briefly about some of the laws. I'm not going to talk about SB 1383 because that's just a whole conversation unto itself, but I assume you are all aware of AB 341, which requires recycling for businesses and multifamily complexes that have a certain amount of trash and recycling that they produce each week. And I'm sure Recology is helping you with that in the way that they can. And then 1826, which is the organic side of that, which is 4 cubic yards of trash service per week. And now it's down to 2 cubic yards, which really covers a lot of the commercial sector. And then I think the one thing I really wanted to point out here was AB 827, which was sort of passed in the middle of the, you know, sort of went into effect in the middle of the pandemic, and so I don't think it's getting a lot of traction right now. But it's a smart idea on the part of the state. The timing is rough, but the idea is that if you are a fast casual eatery like a Los Bagels, or if you offer food, you have to offer the opportunity for that food generating person who comes to your to buy that food to recycle or compost on site. So it basically requires FOH, which is front of house recycling and composting, and it's something that we are trying to gently talk to our businesses about right now, but not in any way you know, be too pushy in the pandemic, but understand that that is something that the state wants us to be doing, which really does make a lot of sense. So this slide has no business being here, but I just couldn't pull it out because I kept trying to reorganize the slides and it just wouldn't go away. So I thought, okay, I'm going to leave it in here. But I think it really talks about this, you know, kind of what Maggie was talking about, that, you know, the proliferation of single-use plastics over our kind of the last century is just so outrageous and so profound. And so I just couldn't take it out. So just to say, there's a lot of plastic out there, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. Has nothing to do exactly with reuse, but maybe it has a lot to do with reuse, and that's why I couldn't take it out. But the next thing I wanted to talk about again is sort of from the statewide perspective. Calorie Cycle has been giving out grants, and there's been all these programs trying to promote ways to manage our resources as well as we can. And finally, in the last year, we have the first cycle of a reuse grant that the state has been putting together. And I think it's very telling that it's taken the state this long to actually do kind of a reuse grant. And I think part of that is that reuse is hard to quantify. And so it's, the state is, whenever they do any grants, they have a lot of food rescue grants. They've done all sorts of different types of grants. It's very important to them that you can measure your success. And I think it's been a challenge to measure reduction. And it's also, anyway, so I think that's just, I'm glad that they're, finally getting around to it, or finally enough of clamoring from the constituents out there to put this program in place. So we have the first cycle happening right now. The grant cycle was for $2 million, which is a good start. And the project range requirement was between $300,000 and $500,000, which is actually kind of a lot of money, like if you're trying to think about what to do with that much money. But they haven't actually made their selections, but I thought it might be interesting to quickly look at the types of criteria they were looking at. So what does the state think is important around reuse? And so the idea is to replace single-use containers, single-use foodware, single-use packaging, and then this whole issue of lumber and wood, which I know is probably very important in the Humboldt area. We, in our area and all over the state, I know, we're dealing with this issue called Woodageddon, where wood is becoming trickier and trickier to handle. And so trying to figure out different ways of managing wood waste or wood product, if you will. So this is, I think, is just interesting to kind of see. These are the types of projects that were eligible. And as I said, they haven't selected the projects that are going to be funded yet, but there is a list of all of the different project submittals. And I thought this was also interesting because it sort of describes all the different types of grants that people think projects that they want to do. And this is from all over the state. And so, it goes from like a mobile washing system for event durables. So you're getting away from this whole single-use thing. So you bring durables to the county fair, for example, and plates and whatnot, and then you have a way of washing them and sterilizing them so they can be used again. Campus reuse systems. I was talking to Maggie about this the first time I came up to Humboldt. I was up in your area a few years ago working on a project up there, and we had the opportunity to go onto the campus. And it was the first time I saw this wonderful sort of to-go container that allows students to take food back to their room or take it outside in a container that can be brought back and washed. And there's no charge for that container. There's like a little small hold that goes on their campus, food card or whatever the payment system is. And then when they bring it back, that goes away. And so it's just a way of, having kind of more of a closed loop. Dish Joy is the same idea of like you basically, rent plates and cutlery and whatnot. And it really kind of think of like Apple when it had 1,000, bunches and bunches of employees coming in for various meals every day, and they didn't necessarily want to own their own materials, but they didn't want to use single use either. So this Dish Joy is the idea of that, where you can go in and they'll bring it in for a fee, obviously, and then take it away and wash it and bring it back again. Conscious container, I don't know much about this, but the idea of creating a glass bottle refill business model, that's a Sonoma-based business. I just thought it was interesting that California State Parks came in with a proposal for ways to reduce single-use items in the parks in partnership with the Clean Water Fund. And then Habitat for Humanity, which has a number of restore businesses, which I think is an important model to think about. The idea of the value embedded already in created items that need to be that have an opportunity that can be reused. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. But this is just maybe 6 of the 20 different project ideas that have been submitted, and we'll see what actually gets funded when those decisions are made. So building on the restore idea, one of the ways that reuse happens in a lot of different communities is there are businesses like Urban Ore in San Francisco, in Berkeley, or Building Resources in San Francisco. And, it's really around building supplies. And so there was a question, I think, before we officially started around people scrounging around at transfer stations and finding reusable items that might be able to be recovered. And the way that the Urban Ore in Berkeley can actually do that, to the person in Southern Humboldt County who was wondering if that's ever something that can be done legally. And that's because Berkeley has blessed that activity. Most communities may be reluctant, but for some reason, because Berkeley is a municipally operated system, they may be more inclined to do that rather than a private hauler like Recology. But these items have so much value, and to have a way of being able to maintain them and honor them and reuse them, it really makes so much sense. And then another idea I just want to throw in here is this idea of fix-it clinics. Fix-it clinics are an idea that often get paired with local libraries to house them, but it's a way of doing repair, which is often tied with reuse. I just want to sort of throw out this idea of a fix-it clinic concept. So I don't have much more to say about that, just that I think that they have a role. If you can repair your toaster or your small appliance or your bicycle, just being able to have this knowledge. And it feels like, in many communities, there are those individuals out there who have that expertise and are really excited to be able to share that. So fix-it clinics are more and more popular. I just wanted to show these images. This is Urban Ore in Berkeley, and just to get a sense of the types of building materials that are available there. It's just kind of a fun place to go. Always something new. And then here are some resources, and this will be available to you all, just places to go for more information about reuse in the building sector. So just an opportunity. And then another area of interest is obviously, kind of like how businesses can swap one material out for another material. So for example, I was looking on the stopwaste.org, which is the Alameda County website, which is actually one of the models that Kate was showing you is also from that website. And Stop Waste is a really great resource. They do a lot of research, and they have a lot, and they make that research available. So I really want to encourage you. They have a bunch of case studies about reuse in small businesses. And so one example was the Tesla, which is based in Fremont in Alameda County, swapped out their single-use cardboard boxes for these reusable racks to hold their windshields, and was able to reduce the amount of cardboard that they needed. Veritable Vegetable, what happens there is you've got like a wholesale produce place, and you have they're basically shrink wrapping materials to redistribute out to their customers. And what they did was they switched from a single-use plastic to a reusable pallet kind of wrap, not a wrap, but like I wish I could show it to you, but it's a way of, it's a reusable wrap. And so not only was it, did it use less single-use plastic, but it was also easier to use and was less problematic for the employees. So I just did want to touch base on cardboard, because I think cardboard is something that, as a small business, I would imagine many of you are dealing with a lot of cardboard. And one of the suggestions that we use a lot with our businesses is the idea of a small baler that you might own individually. And it might be worth the investment, because then instead of paying to have your material taken away, you actually can have, it has enough value that you may be able to sell that material. So it might be something that you have on your own, or something that you might consider sharing with enough businesses in the area. And another alternative to cardboard, if you may have seen, like at a local, I don't know, a CVS or a Walgreens, where they're coming, where there's sort of an internal structure where you're bringing materials in plastic totes, and those totes can be refilled. So if if it's coming from a distribution and you're sharing it out. So that's just a thought. I just wanted to bring that up, that possibly as you are connecting with your neighbors, there may be some ways to consider a small baler, and that might be worth the investment if everyone comes in together. One of the newer sort of exciting ideas that seem to be taking hold is this idea of durable takeout containers, as we're talking about so much, especially during COVID. This company, Dispatch Goods, provides steel reusable containers for anything from coffee to go food. And then the idea is that you the user bring it back, or there are ways to discard that in places where it will be collected and washed and reused. And I just wanted to point out that there's a very fancy restaurant in San Francisco called Zuni Cafe, and they've decided that all of their takeout is going to be in this type of material. And they're just, it's almost easier if you have kind of an expensive restaurant, because you can kind of embed the cost, of these items. It doesn't sort of stand out as much. In some cases, businesses are actually charging a fee for that, or there's like a deposit. There's a lot of different systems out there, but I really like their tagline: more tasty, less wasty. It's kind of cute. But it's just sort of an interesting model, and Dispatch Goods is just one of many models out there that are kind of taking hold, as some, Berkeley and many other communities are starting to ban single-use, coffee cups and that type of thing. So, of course, the pandemic is slowing all of this down, but we'll get back there to this idea. Another sort of reuse model is this East Bay Depot for Creative Reuse, which is based in, it's actually based in Oakland, and it's closed right now because of the pandemic, but I'm hoping they're going to be able to reopen. And this is just a partial list of the types of things that they take. This is really caters towards teachers. They give you a discount if you're a teacher. It's just all sorts of, this and that, stuff that it's so fun to go in there and look around, and there's all sorts of, fun things, but it's everything from like fabric to kitchen gadgets to this, that, and the other thing. And, it's really focused on, yarn and paint and, postcards and just all sorts of fun things to just try and, kind of all in one place to facilitate projects and ideas and, creative outlet. So just, another sort of reuse model idea, targeting a totally different type of sector. And then, reuse, this is really more for your, consumers, but just making sure that, you're using reusable produce bags when you can, and that, or there's this new business called zerogrocery.com, where everything that they sell comes in, in mason jars, all their bulk items, that type of thing. Refill stations are also refill businesses are becoming quite popular, which is really exciting, where you can, refill your shampoo container, or you can buy shampoo in a bar. Just bulk purchases, buying in bulk, all those kinds of ideas for reducing single use. So just throwing that in there, really kind of more for your off hours, but just to say. And then this picture just feels like this was originally from a Sunset magazine from like the 60s. And it's like the single-use lifestyle, and it's super exciting. And isn't that great? And we can just, everything's so free and we can just do what we want. And yeah, well, that's not working out so well for us now. But I just think it's sort of humorous in a sad kind of a way. And then these are just a couple of quotes. I really like this Pete Seeger one. So let's give you a second to read through them. And yeah, that's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions or circle back on anything. I'm sure I just zipped through all of that, and I hope it was helpful.
All right. Any questions, anybody? Feel free to put them in the chat. It looks like we have one. I'll read that out loud. This is from Kira. Our company has a lot of plastic film waste, and I've been using this website to drop off locations. But when I call the stores directly, they say they only accept plastic shopping bags rather than other plastic films such as number 4, etc. Is there a place that anyone knows that will accept this type of plastic? And she has a plasticfilmrecycling.org link in there. So how do we get rid of some of those film plastics, or can we?
Is this our Arcata specific question, or?
Well, I can take a stab at it. This is a problem you've identified for everybody. Whenever I go to those locations, the stores that have a container out front for you to drop off your single-use, your thin film plastic bags. I think the city of Eureka has had it in the Adorni Center. Whenever you go to those places and you ask the folks who work there, what happens to this? Their answer, they kind of glaze over, and their answer is, it gets recycled. And I say, oh, cool. Where's it go? And what product is it being made into? And I'm just suggesting that even those places, that particular type of plastic is so problematic that I'm not certain that it's being recycled. So always looking for alternatives that are reusable or other material types is preferred. In something may say on it that it is recyclable, and it may very well be in Tallahassee, Florida, but it is not in Humboldt County. And so in our remote location from large urban centers where manufacturers and maybe some of the buyers for these materials are, or even worse yet, I don't know if any of you have seen those horrible pictures of 6-year-olds and their families picking through plastic bags in Malaysia and Thailand and other poorer countries. Those are human rights violations, and that's not my idea of recycling. So it is a problem. And I will only suggest what I do. I don't drop off any materials intending for them to be recycled unless they can tell me where it's going and what is it being made into. If they can't tell me, then they're not being transparent enough, and I have good cause for questioning. Sorry, not the best answer that you'd like to have.
No, but indicative of the issue, I think, which is, some of the stuff just won't or doesn't or can't get recycled, and so we need to look at alternatives. We have a question from Nicole. She says, we work at the same location, and another challenge we come up with against as we move further into the pandemic is recycling air filters. They have air filters across the agency, and where to do that? How do you get rid of air filters? They change the filters every 3 months, so it's a lot of air filter waste. Any ideas? The only place they found so far is TerraCycle online, which is thousands of dollars to mail in and have recycled.
Okay, well, I will just chime in that you're ahead of me in terms of finding any option. I was trying to figure out that, crack that nut, and I was unsuccessful. I was hoping possibly that a compost facility might take it, because I figure, well, it's paper and maybe it's full of, particles, but the facility that I was working, in the community I was working with, the compost facility that we were that took our steps, said they didn't want it. And this was when I worked in Marin, and I don't know if you guys know the Civic Center in Marin. It's a Frank Lloyd Wright building, and they were changing out their air filters, and there were hundreds of them, and they all ended up going into the trash because we couldn't find another option for them. But I bet that's an issue that a lot of people are facing more and more. I'm probably not that interested in my anecdotal lack of success, but maybe just to say, it's like, it's not obvious. And maybe your compost facility would take them. I think it's worth asking.
Kira and Nicole, it sounds like that might be a good project for a research project for, we have a new student intern coming on board at Zero Waste Humboldt. We should bring that up. So connect with us. School is, I think this is the first or second day that the HSU is back in session, and we can work on that. If there aren't any more questions for Judith, I want to really thank her perspective and all of her examples, but we're wrapping up at 3:30, and I want to hold people a little bit longer to give them a little bit of inspiration about moving forward.
And I have a good project idea that came up. Dottie was talking about how I believe 7-Up will deliver things in reusable containers, but that the other distributor, which I believe is the Coca-Cola distributor, won't do it, and that she's too small to affect that. But perhaps if we had a whole group of businesses get together and demand that as an organizing tool, then you might be able to better affect their decision making about those containers. So that might be another good project for the Zero Waste Humboldt, is to rally all those businesses together to make that demand. I don't see any other questions in the questions and answers. Are there any others that people might have? I don't see any. So if not, I'll turn it over to Maggie for a wrap up.
Well, I'm going to go through this first page very quickly. It is really all about economic development, and we've brought up we will never be able to shorten the distance between our Humboldt Bay area, our population center up here, and Portland or San Francisco area. The distance we can't do anything about. Dealing with economy of scale issues is something that, as Greg has just said, pulling resources, pulling together cooperative purchases and problem solving is really something that can help do this. We're wanting to promote among our economic development professionals and the Prosperity Network to incorporate this planning as part of our overall region's economic development recovery after pandemic. And so often the first thing some people will leap to is number 4, yeah, let's start a brand new business. And we all know how extremely difficult it is to start a brand new business from scratch in Humboldt County. People do it all the time. God love them. And they're entrepreneurial, and they're creative and resourceful. An easier way is to go about it if we're trying to incorporate reuse of materials or locally collected recycled material into value-added products made locally, is to go to already existing businesses and see if they can add on a new product line, or there's just a whole variety of ways. So these 5 points are for economic development professionals, and we'll be working more with our folks on that in the future. This is one of our Zero Heroes. Each year we acknowledge a handful of businesses for just being great, inspiring examples and good models for others. These guys are, I think their business is roughly 4 years old. It's fairly young. And we don't have enough of these types of businesses in Humboldt County. So they just gave themselves a new name of Reschool, because they do more than deconstruction and then bring in building materials and just a whole variety of them. They also provide a service of training and coaching and helping people learn to see what to do with these different types of materials. So Judith, this would be our small local example of urban ore in Berkeley. And they were just recently acknowledged last fall in as one of our Zero Heroes. So some of our businesses that we acknowledge as good examples each year, we acknowledge, like Los Bagels, because they have committed to the path of working towards reducing waste bit by bit. Others help they have a service or a business that helps others to reduce waste. Recycling-based manufacturing, Jennifer Sherman Roop is a clever, creative artist and dedicated to dealing with the problem of plastics. And she uses pharmacy pill bottles. That's her source. And so she makes really beautiful jewelry. Thimbleberry Threads started in 1987. Beth Cabot, the owner, was noticing that sleeping bag manufacturer Moonstone Mountaineering, their dumpster was filling up with clean fiber fill. And so she started out as a pillow maker, and since 1987 she continues, but she has a variety of beautiful designs that are on a variety of different products. She's pretty well known for fairs and festivals, is where a lot of people will see her over the years. So it's a good example of reuse of materials. This is a project that got waylaid by COVID-19 that we hope to pick up again once we can. But so many of our small businesses don't have a lot of storage space behind the front shop. And Amazon and those companies are killing them, and they're also bringing in everything overpackaged in many boxes and plastic packaging. And so this project it's almost like those of you who have been in the field know CalMax, but rather than having a storage facility for all of this, it would be an online posting. Business could say, twice a week I get a delivery of X boxes of this size. They're clean, come get them. So this would be we would help with the information exchange, but this would be intended as another example of business to business assistance and reuse. This is in the arena of hopes and dreams and aspirations. We have often, we've done some research more than 20 years ago now, and it's time to look at it again. We're finding that times have changed enough that some things that did not pencil out in the past might now. The economy of scale issue might work now. And I'm even learning that a lot of the equipment to manufacture different kinds of products used to be one size fits all and can be scaled down now to fit our region and smaller businesses better. So what we don't want is the to get your blueberries in the plastic container in the foreground. What we do want are a variety of other fiber opportunities. In the old days, I just always got my berries at the store in blue, purple dyed fruit trays or these cartons. And so it's a basic hydropulper. It's like a giant washing machine, and you throw in scrap paper, and it's dried and molded into product. So the question is, could this be a viable business venture in Humboldt County? Could we make this? So on the left side, you see here the one small carton. I have it right here. People bring me examples, and I remember getting. It used to be real common. You'd get your wine bottles of that type, in molded sheets to help with not breakage and that kind of thing. But there's just a zillion different kinds. This was in a shoe that I bought, molded fiber, and so that's the kind of research we need to keep moving forward on, and hopefully with HSU and with our local economic development community, taking our locally collected secondary resources, our recycled material, taking it seriously to be a part of our circular economy. Here's a couple of examples, and one example that Judith raised, and we're doing research very much on the same thing. We started in 2019. We've had 4 different disciplines, 4 different faculty from different perspectives at HSU help us with this, but there are several regions around the country where they have a number of breweries, wineries, cider makers, where there's beverages being made, and for us to make a go of it in Humboldt County. So this is going back to return to returnables, the old system of the bottles are a little bit thicker glass, and then you take it back to where you bought it. It goes back to the manufacturer, the brewery or the winery, and they have sanitizing equipment for those bottles. And so it might need to be at least to start with a cooperatively owned, so that the washing is done with several different businesses to make a go of it. This is a part of the analysis that we're putting together right now. But the Marin example is exciting. The state of Oregon has done this for many years. They're a tried and true great example. Missoula, Montana's breweries have, in that area, Missoula, Montana is very much like, size-wise, our micropolitan community business environment of the Arcata, Eureka, Humboldt Bay area. And so we're looking into this has been analyzed in years past, and it never quite penciled out, but conditions have changed. We have more breweries. They're hanging on, some of them by their toenails right now because of the pandemic. Wineries, and again, Humboldt made beverages of all types, juices, cider, and other types. It'd be great if some of our most loved local dairies would go back to returnable, washable bottles. So that's this returnable system. Those are my different examples of what's already being done by small local companies in reuse and manufacturing with recyclables, and in the world of possibilities, opportunities that, Judith showed some good examples of, I raised yesterday the potential for us to secure state funding for recycling and reuse in Humboldt County. This is all being driven because climate change is really negatively affecting California. And in years past, the motivation was just landfills. But because it's more now climate change, we're learning better ways to measure our waste, and these new types of business and the types of measurement that Kate presented, it all factors into this, that makes us hopeful and keeps us going at Zero Waste Humboldt. Any questions or other suggestions, ideas that you know of? We have a number of businesses like Bubbles, soaps and shampoos. I think almost since her business began in the 70s, she's incentivized $1 off if you bring your plastic shampoo bottle in to be refilled at their store. These are all great examples of reuse systems instead of total reliance on an overburdened, not particularly well working system right now of mixed recycling.
All right. Well, it seems like we're coming down to the end here. If there are any questions for any of our panelists, they're still on line here. Except I think Eddie, looks like Eddie left, but go ahead and put those in the question and answer. Looks like, we did have a request for another program. Joel would love to see a school-specific version of this workshop. So the challenge is ahead. Let's do it for schools. That'd be great.
You know,
Dottie, Dottie says, thank you so much. Thank you, Dottie. If there are no other questions, we will go ahead and sign off. The slide just was an email up on the screen. If you needed any more information, you can email zerowastehumboldt@gmail.com, Zero Waste Humboldt being all one word, or you can go to zerowastehumboldt.org. And remember, if you want access to all the materials, you can just click on that link on that website. And the password to get in is ZWH, all capitals, 2021. If there's nothing else, Maggie, any last thoughts before we let people go?
No, I really appreciate everyone, their interest in this whole issue and joining in. And you'll get one more email from us and we'll continue. The point about the schools, the goal here is to start with this training that has got many, many different types of participants and then start to zero in. So we would come up with one for schools and another one for perhaps just the cannabis industry and another one for bakeries. And, you know, we'll end up.
There we go. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. If there's nothing else, we'll say goodbye. And again, if you have any questions, just let folks at Zero Waste Humboldt know. Nice seeing you, Judith. We haven't seen each other in forever. She hasn't changed, but I've gotten fatter and grayer. Thank you all.